Okay, good morning, everyone. I do see that we got a couple more stragglers who logged on, so I'm glad to see you're all here. Again, my name is Jet Lewis. I want to welcome you all to our third retirement webinar. We are happy to continue providing outreach to our membership during these trying times, especially in a safe environment. So that's important to us that we continue to keep that connection with each of you. So on that note, thank you for taking part in today's session. And I say taking part because I hope to have an active and engaging interaction with each of you today. Something that we beta tested during our last session was Q&A in the chat during the presentation. And we got good feedback on that, and I think that our staff enjoyed that as well. So we're going to continue that. As you have questions about what we're talking about, what I'm presenting, do ask that in the chat. I understand that we have two different chat windows. There's a general chat and there's a specialized Q&A chat area. So do please ask your questions in the Q&A chat box. That's where we would like for that to be. And on that note, I'm joined here by other SCERS retirement staff. I'm joined by Mario SCERS, our Chief Benefits Officer, John Lindley, our Supervising IT Analyst, Stephanie Schmidt, one of our retirement analysts, and Julie Duong, who is our senior specialist. And of course, myself again, Jet Lewis, and I'm an analyst here as well. So enough for the introductions. Let me go ahead and pull up the slides and we will get started. All right, thanks, John. Okay, so everybody, this is our advanced career retirement session. Part of our window audience for this is anyone who is perhaps as far as 5 years out from retirement and all the way up to you're gearing towards retirement shortly. So kind of our roadmap for the day is I will go through an overview, a basic overview of what retirement benefits are with SCERS, what we offer, what we can do for you. We talk about what kinds of choices you're going to have to make along the way. So retirement elections, other benefit decisions. We will talk about estimates and what kind of tools you have that are available to you now and have been, and what you can do to figure out what your benefit will look like ahead of time. We'll talk about planning for retirement. What kinds of things can you do today to make your retirement process smoother, even if it's 3 months out, 6 months, a year, any period of time? What can you do now to make that smoother? We'll also talk about after retirement. Oftentimes it's looked at as though the retirement process is where you engage with us and that's the end. But in reality, that's really more of the beginning, because ideally speaking, each of us will have a long and successful post-retirement career where we reap the benefit of these benefits you've paid into. So what kinds of engagement do you need to be ready for with SCERS after retirement? And then we'll close out with a bit of a Q&A session, with me over the microphone. And then we also will have, like I shared earlier, the message box where you'll be able to continually ask questions throughout. So that's what we're going to look at for the day, probably around an hour or so. And we'll jump into what the SCERS benefits are and how we build them. So to begin, it's a defined benefit program is what SCERS has and offers. And that is different from what you'll understand with a 401k or with our Fidelity 457 accounts, in that you pay a defined amount into the account while you work. And so you are contributing while you are working. And as part of that, you are earning service credit along that way. And the purpose for this is that at retirement, instead of having a large pool of money to pull from as you sort of would like or design, you've paid towards this account, and then through our equation, which I'm going to jump into here in a second, is that you'll receive a monthly lifetime benefit. And that's, again, for your life, as opposed to the 457 where you have an account balance, and as you pull that account down to zero eventually, that's the end. So The key difference is a lifetime piece versus a account balance. That's how I like to think of it. So then how do we define what that benefit is? Well, we've got three factors. So your age and your time working with the county and your pay rate. So age, we use an age factor, and that is a percentage that is based off of how old you are when you turn your benefit on. It acts as a multiplier for the rest of the benefit. Service credit is quite simply how long you've worked with the county. You accrue it in hours, but we measure this in years. So if you've worked full-time for a year, then that's 1 year of service credit. Final compensation it's a bit of a technical term, and it's akin to your salary. So it's your highest earnings for a period of time. Depending on your plan or tier, it's either a 12-month period or 12 or 36 consecutive month period. And we'll delve a little more deeply into each of those, but the actual equation that we have, as you can see, is age factor, which is a percent. We multiply it by how many years of credit you have, and we multiply that by your final compensation. And that will, essentially tell us what the monthly benefit is for you. If you wanted to do a back of the envelope calculation for your benefit, you could do that with these pieces right here. Sorry about that. Okay, so before we jump more into that, let's talk about how you become eligible for these benefits. Vesting and eligibility. So what I wanted to share is that for all plan and tiers, you are vested at 5 years of service credit. So, and what does vested mean? Vested means that you are eligible for a future benefit. Now, if you started before 2013 with the county, which probably most, if not all of you did, then there are actually two pieces. So there's the vesting requirement, which is 5 years of time with the county, but you must get to 10 years of time to be able to retire. And so what that means is you could work for 5 years, and then you could have left county employment and waited 5 years. That would get you to that 10. That means you're eligible to retire. Now, on the offside chance that you started after 2013, there's no 10-year piece that's required. It's just, are you vested? Do you have 5 years? And are you of the appropriate age? There are a couple exceptions to the age requirements that would allow you to retire early. So, for example, if you are 70 years old, you can retire at any number of years of credit. You could work for a year and turn on a very small benefit. Other exceptions are for safety individuals. And again, this is specific to if you started before 2013. If you worked for 20 years of time, you may retire regardless of age. And for miscellaneous, it's a similar situation. If you work 30 years of time, you can retire regardless of your age as well. And again, here at the bottom, if you did start after 2013, you see the minimum age requirements, 52 and 55. Okay. So jumping back into our 3 different pieces that let us build what this retirement benefit looks like. We have the chart here, and what this table does is it shares what the minimum age factors are and the maximum age factors are. And what I want to highlight for this slide is that whatever your plan on the left, whatever your tier as well, you can then see what the minimum age is for retiring, and you can see what the appropriate age factor is, that percentage for that minimum age. So again, these are minimums. And then on the right-hand side, we see what those maximums are, the maximum age and the maximum factor. So again, what I want to share here is that this is a sliding scale. And so at any age between the minimum and the maximum, your age factor will, the higher your age goes, the higher your age factor goes. So when we talk about decisions for retirement, your age is a key player there, because you can see that the older you are when you choose to retire, the larger that number, and then that'll have a staggering impact on how large your benefit can grow. The system is designed to reward longevity, So working towards those higher percentages will have a significant change on your benefit amount. So service credit, again, it's surprisingly simple. If you've worked a full-time year, then you will have earned 1 year of credit for that period. It is a percentage, it's not, I'm sorry. It is not a step function, which means that if you work for half of a year, you do get 1/2 of a year of credit. So we don't round down is what I want to share. And then next is our final compensation, the term for your salary. So the difference here is that if you are in a tier 1 plan, safety or miscellaneous, then you get the benefit of a 12 consecutive month period. And what we do is we take the total amount that you were paid for that period, and then we divide that into a monthly figure. So it's a 12-month period. Now, for all other plans and tiers, it's a longer period. It's 36 consecutive months. So it's good to be aware of, but that's the period that we look at. Most often, this is your the last period of your employment. It's possible that it could be a period of employment before your last period. It's rare, but it's possible. The most common example is maybe you were working an out-of-class assignment for a period of time, and that out-of-class position had a notably higher pay. And then you left that out-of-class position and went back to work for a couple of years and then retired. So that is possible. If you think that might be your situation, you can let one of our specialists know when you're going to retire, and you can request a different period of time for your final compensation. And we'll go into that and make sure that that is true or is not. And that is an option as well. You can do that. But again, most often it's your last 1 year or your last 3 years, and we'll do that for you automatically. One piece I want to share is, well, actually 2 pieces. Number 1 is a common item that's sort of misconstrued, is that overtime pay is not a part of your compensation earnable. So if maybe 5 years ago you worked just a ton of overtime and you got paid a lot more because of that, that doesn't mean that your final compensation is higher during that period. So that's a good thing to know. There's actually a couple of different types of special pay elements that don't always get included in final compensation. And so I do want to refer you to our final comp policy, which you can view on our website. That can give you a pretty thorough list of what is or what is not, in case you have a kind of pay that you think maybe that won't be eligible. So do feel free to take a look there. And also, of course, you can feel free to reach out to one of our specialists. They can go over that with you. Okay, so moving right along, looking at retirement elections and what kinds of decisions you end up making. So one of the big items you choose is what type of continuing benefit you want to leave to a spouse or loved one. And we do that with what we call the option elections. And these option elections, they mean 2 things. They have an impact on what your benefit amount can be, and they have an impact on what kind of continuing lifetime benefit you want to give to somebody else. Typically, we're talking about a spouse. We are also looking more specifically at financially dependent individuals. So for spouses, the unmodified benefit is going to provide a 60% benefit to your spouse when you die. Unmodified is also the largest your benefit can be. It's the maximum. Option 2 is a little less than unmodified. I'm sorry, I misspoke. Option 1 is a little less than unmodified. Option 2 is notably less, and option 3 is in between. And the differences are that option 1 does not provide a continuance. There's no continuing benefit after you die, but there is the possibility for a lump sum payment. Option 2 provides 100% of your benefit to your spouse, or of course, registered domestic partner. We use those 2 terms interchangeably. So again, option 2 provides 100%, so it's the exact same benefit. There's no change. We just, slap your spouse's name on there and get ready to start paying them. And option 3 is a 50% option. So this has an impact on what those benefits look like, and I'm going to walk you through what the different numbers would look like for an example member in a moment. Some other decisions that we end up looking at are purchases. it is possible sometimes to make a purchase to add service credit to your account. We've got a couple of different examples of types of time that you may be eligible to purchase. Probably the best examples are if you're out on a medical leave and medical unpaid leave, then you may be able to buy that time. The pre-membership is another pretty common example. A lot of county individuals start county employment in a part-time capacity, and so what that means is when you're a part-time employee, you're not contributing to SCERS yet. Public service is if you worked with, the federal agency or a different public agency outside of California, you can look into buying some of that time. That also applies to some prior military service. And then a redeposit is if you worked with the county before, and when you left, you refunded your account. So if you come back to us, you can look into buying that time back. So these are not the only categories of time. They're just the most common ones. We do have a policy on this as well, of course, and that is available at scurs.org. So if you have a kind of time where you were not contributing to SCERS and you want to try to add service credit to your account, take a look at that policy and identify what kind of time you have and if it fits in there, and then reach out to us and we'll help you figure that out. We'll talk about how to go ahead and how do you pay for that time. So I got a little ahead of myself. This is the slide that talks about paying for that time. So the cost for the time does get larger the longer you wait, the older that time is. The reason for that is we calculate how much money you would have contributed during the window and how much interest would have accrued on that money since that period of time. So if you were trying to make a purchase from 1 year ago, that might not be as expensive as a purchase from 10 years ago because you're looking at 1 year of interest versus 10 years of interest. That's the concept behind that. An additional note is that these kinds of purchases must be done before you retire. And so actually on that note, if any of you have any notion of purchases that you might be looking at, maybe you've been considering and you've kind of put it off, I would begin this process today. It only gets more expensive. And again, like I just shared, is you must be done with these purchases before you retire. So it can only slow you down. There's no time like the present. Additionally, when we're talking about how to pay for these items, you can do lump sum payments. Do that with a rollover from your county fidelity account. You can also set up payroll deductions. So that way we can keep all of this pre-tax. So there's a multitude of ways to actually pay for these items. So that would be a part of the process. If you reach out to the office, we would let you know how much the cost is and then what your options are for how you could make that repayment. Takeaways being, if you're interested, start that now. And also, you cannot continue your purchase after you've retired. It must stop. We must be finished. Okay, so we talked a little bit about what the benefit is and how to calculate it. Let's actually go through some of the tools we've got and an actual calculation. So here is our example member. This individual is a miscellaneous tier 3 person, which means they started before 2013. They are 55 and a half years old, and they started, they've worked with the county for 15 years. Their last 3 years of pay, their final compensation averaged to $6,000 a month. And so those are the key pieces we look at for this person. And then down here, this bottom line tells us what each of those are. So a miscellaneous tier 3 person at age 55 and a half, his age factor is 2%. So that's our 0.02. And 15 years of service credit, we multiply that by 15. And then $6,000, we multiply that by $6,000. So our very simple back of the envelope estimate for this person is his benefit would be, or his or her benefit would be $1,800 a month. So hopefully all or most of you have tried our benefit calculator before. This is an excellent tool. There are two ways you can use this. You can have you can get a login from the office, and that way we can pull your specific history into this. The alternative is you can just go there by yourself and you can hand enter all of your data. So 2 different ways to use the calculator. Both are good. Getting your login is technically better because then you're using live county data. So it's more accurate, less room for error. But at either rate, I'm more interested in the fact that you're using the calculator. And so this is what the calculator shows us for the individual I shared with you a moment ago. So this would be an exact benefit amount for that every person I shared. And again, that person is 55 and a half years old. Final comp was $6,000. And they're miscellaneous tier 3. So this also combines our rough estimate with what those options are and what those mean. So you can see on the left what the benefit amounts are given each option. This is what the retiree, this is what you would be paid when you retired if you were this person who worked 15 years. The unmodified is the largest amount, and then it goes down from there essentially. So unmodified, option 1 is a little less, option 2 is less than that, option 3 is between option 1 and 2. So what would drive your desire to go to one of those other options is the column on the right, and that's your continuance to your beneficiary, your spouse or loved one. And so unmodified gives you the largest figure, and it gives your spouse 60% of what you get paid. So we can see here in exact numbers, that's $1,000, $1,061. Like I shared earlier, option 1 is there is no continuance. Option 1 provides a potential for a lump sum payment when you pass, and no continuing benefit. So you might look at that if you didn't have a spouse, maybe you had children, and it wasn't as necessary. Option 2 provides 100% of your benefit to your spouse. So that way there'd be no fluctuation in your income after you've died, so your spouse keeps getting the exact same pay you were getting. And then option 3 is a 50% figure. And why might you choose option 3 over the unmodified is a really common question, because it actually pays you less and it pays your beneficiary less compared to your spouse. You wouldn't choose option 3 if you were married. You would choose option 3 if maybe you had a disabled adult child who was dependent on you for income. You could look at that, and that would be something that might justify that kind of choice. Otherwise, if you're married, you'd probably be looking at unmodified or option 2. So again, you can see how this choice here is a strong indicator, because it does affect both your income in retirement and your spouse's. So, planning for retirement, thinking ahead, how do you get ahead of the game, and how do you make this as seamless and as simple as a transition as possible? So a couple of things. Number 1 is estimates. Because these defined benefit programs are, well, because they're so defined, you can forecast what your benefit looks like using the calculator tool I just shared. You could do that if you were going to retire in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years, in 30 years. So we want this to be very planned, and having a good estimate of what your benefit looks like at your potential retirement date is probably the first step for that. We want you to know what your benefit is well before time. The next piece is reciprocity. Maybe you've worked with another retirement system in California, CalPERS, SCERS, those are the 2 common ones, a different county system. If you have worked time in another public system in California, then you may be able to activate reciprocity between SCERS and that other system. To do that, you'll engage with both that system and us. And what that does is that creates a link between the 2 of us. And there are benefits to doing that. The benefits being that it can waive the vesting requirement. So if you worked for the state, for example, for 25 years, and then you came to that county and worked here for the last 2 or 3, normally you have to work for at least 5 years before you can retire with us. But through reciprocity, if you activate this, we would identify, okay, this person worked for the state for 25 years, and then he worked with us for the last couple of years, and we can bypass that. So we can kind of ignore the vesting requirements. Another key benefit of reciprocity is that we will share your salary information with that other system. So when you work at the end, typically speaking, at the end of your career, actually, hang on, I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Okay, we're good. So yes, typically at the end of your career, your salary is the highest. And so that way it's good to have this share of salary info so that when both systems do the calculation for what your benefit looks like, you're getting the benefit of that higher salary in both systems. Those are the two main pieces of reciprocity. Another item, not that any of us ever planned for divorce, but these things do occur. And so California is a community property state. I'm going to jump into that more in just a little bit here. But retiring during a divorce can result in significant delays or even the cancellation of your retirement application. So because California is a community property state, you have to resolve that matter before we can begin with dispersing your benefits. And the reason for that is that your spouse has a vested interest in your retirement account because California defines it as a CP asset. So either get divorced before you retire or after, but hopefully not during. Now, the next piece here is what kinds of vital documents do we end up needing? And it's always disappointing when we see a delay because of this. There are a variety of specific documents we need to have before we can turn your benefit on. And sometimes, birth certificates, marriage certificates, RDP certificates. These things get lost in the moves. They get lost because they don't get used very often, and they do take a significant amount of time to order to get replaced. And so either find those documents ahead of time and have a special folder ready to go, or even better than that is I'd recommend that you get those documents and send copies of them to us early. That way we can have them, keep them on file, and we don't have to worry about it. So see the service retirement package for a complete listing of all the documents that are required. And that way you can know what you have to get on your list early. Now, let's say you're ready to retire and you're going to submit your application. When and how early can you do that? What are the rules that apply? So the first rule is we want you to have your application submitted to us 60 days early. You actually cannot submit it more than 60 days early. So 60 is the maximum amount of early days you can send that in. So pick your retirement date, count back 60 days, and get us that document that many days early. That's the key rule. The next piece is you're not able to backdate your retirement. So no retroactive retirement dates. What that means is what is today? Today's the 3rd. You could not give me your application today and tell me that you wanted to retire. You quit working and you wanted to retire as of November 1st. We can't go back in time. We can only go prospectively. So I'd tell you that today was the early. If you got your application today, today is the earliest day that could be your retirement day. Okay, so now that we've gone through the process and you're retired, 1, congratulations, and 2, what next? So there's a bit of a shift. As a retiree, you get paid once a month and not every 2 weeks. So be ready for this. And the next piece is, and I touched on this earlier, is that really when you retire, that's the beginning of a longer term relationship for you and SCERS. So if you move, we want to have the current address for you. We want to have current tax withholding preferences from you. Maybe you're going to go out of state. We want to have good contact information for you. We're going to make sure that your deductions are appropriate. We're going to make sure that your beneficiaries are appropriate and on file. So do maintain an accurate or an active dialogue with us so that we can have current contact information. We do send out tax documents each year, of course, so that's pretty standard. We want to make sure that we have the right address for you. I want to take a quick moment and chat about deductions because that's a really common question that we get, and that is what types of deductions or taxes come out of your retirement benefit from SCERS. So your benefit is a taxable benefit. It's taxable income. So well, you can elect to have state and federal taxes taken out. If you move out of state and you need to pay state taxes in a different state, we cannot deduct state taxes for any state other than California. So you'll have to work that out with that specific state and a tax professional. But so regular income tax comes out, but no Social Security tax comes out. You don't pay into SCERS any longer as a retiree. So really, primarily, you're looking at state and federal taxes coming out. Those are the two main things. If you choose to be a part of county healthcare and you want to have one of those plans moving forward, you have that option. And for more specific information on that, I would, of course, refer you to the Employee Benefits Office because that's what they maintain. Excuse me. So they can do that for you, but your benefit for healthcare, if you're paying for one of those plans, would also be deducted from your paycheck. And that's essentially it. Those two items, income taxes and healthcare, are what you're going to look at, what comes out of your check from SCERS. So other things that occur in retirement, you do get a cost of living adjustment, a pay raise each year. This occurs in April, and it occurs for all plans and tiers except for miscellaneous tier 2. It's kind of a small specialized population, so everyone else does get a COLA, and that's, generally speaking, it's a 2% increase. That 2% does compound, and then if you're in tier 1, miscellaneous or safety, it can be higher than that. It can go all the way up to 4, but it doesn't always go to 4. Each year this information is tracked, of course, and so we calculate our COLA based off of information from the Consumer Price Index. So it is subject to change. Here, okay. Now, this is uncommon, but sometimes when people retire, they want to go work again, and there's a plan for that. So there's kind of 3 different categories for this. The first is you worked with the county, you've retired, and then you want to go get a job that's in the private sector or just outside of, government work, outside of public employment. You can go do that, and there's no impact on your retirement benefit from SCERS. There's no interaction from your employer and from the county. The next type of this is retired annuitant, and that is when, as a retiree, you want to come back and work for the county in a part-time capacity. And again, you can do that. There are limitations, though. So the first is that when you retire, there's a 6-month cooling off period where you're not allowed to return to work. Some safety categories are excluded from this specific item, but most of you, there's a 6-month cooling off period, after which you can come back to work for the county. And there's a maximum number of hours per year you can work, and that's 960 hours. And as long as you stay within that limit, there's no impact on your SCERS retirement benefit. So you can work from the county, get paid, also get paid from SCERS. So no interaction. And the third category here is someone who comes back to work in a full-time permanent capacity. Now what that does, and this is a bit of a process because you have to engage with the employer first and get that dialed in, and then what you do is as you get ready to start, you'll work with us, and SCERS will turn your retirement benefit off because you are terminating your retired status and you are going back to active employee status. So your retirement benefit turns off, and then you are, as an employee of the county, paying SCERS contributions. You're going to pay back into the system as you're working. And as you're paying into the system, that means you're accruing more service credit. Your final compensation will be different, hopefully higher. And then when you retire again down the road, your age will be higher as well. So you'll have a higher age factor. So doing this means that your retirement benefit will be larger when you retire the second time. Not very common, but it is possible. And so I wanted to take a moment here and address some questions and answers. So I know that you guys have been busily typing away because I can hear them in the other room typing their responses to you. And great, I'm glad to hear that. I'm going to take a little bit of time. It's about 11:40. and I'll go over a couple of the frequently asked questions that we have. I understand that we shared this information as a part of the packet we sent to each of you, so you do have these questions. I'm just going to pick a couple of them out and respond over the group. Let's go ahead and do that now. So probably the first and most prevalent question is, how long will it take for me to receive my retirement check? And so we are diligently over here working to make sure that we do this as quickly as possible. Our goal is to get you paid within a 45-day window from your retirement date. Sometimes it does take longer than that, so it's good to keep that in mind, but our target is that 45. A good example of why that may take longer is, again, maybe there's a community property issue that cropped up and you forgot about, and we have to have you track down that document to get that completed. That's not uncommon. So if you have a past divorce, that's one of the things you want to take a look at before you retire. But again, 45 days is our target. I'm going to skip, well, the next question is, how early or when should you submit your application? I did talk about that. 60 days early from your retirement date, that's the best time to do it. Oh, here's a good one. So, commonly retirees or members hear or believe that March is the best time to retire. And that's not, flatly speaking, accurate. You may retire at any point throughout the year. We do have a lot of retirees come in March, and the reason they do that is that they can receive the cost of living adjustment, because that occurs in April. So if you retired before then, you get that first raise. However, retiring in March does not mean that your benefit grows faster than it does in other periods, because there's a handful of pieces that make up what this benefit looks like. Again, every 3 months, your age is higher and you get a larger age factor. Also, every 3 months, well, not every 3 months, every period of pay, you're paid at your new current rate, which is your highest rate. So technically, every couple weeks, if you get raises each year, your final compensation will go up a little bit as well. So that's 2 of the 3 factors. And then the third is every 2 weeks, you are earning more service credit. So each period you work, your service credit total goes up as well. So what does that mean? When is the best time to retire? And unfortunately, that's not a question that we can answer en masse to everyone, and there isn't always really an answer to that anyway. It's just a matter of what makes sense for you in your career planning, your retirement planning, and taking a look at your specific benefit. I would do this with the calculator. I would estimate, if you've got a target, I would estimate 3 6 months before, on then 3 6 months afterwards, using our calculator to see what the differences would be, because you will see changes. So the key takeaway is that March can be the best day for you, but it's not nearly as often the case as we encounter. So another common question is, what's the best age to retire? It's kind of in the same vein, and this is a bit of a similar answer. I will tell you this, that the system rewards longevity. And so what that means is the older you are when you retire, the larger the benefit will be. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the best age for you. So a lot of this is financial planning, what makes sense for you, and when are you at the right level to continue that lifestyle that you've grown accustomed to. That's a big part of this. You can identify what the maximum age factor is for your plan and tier. I had a slide on that earlier. And that's available in our member handbook. You can take a look at that on our website. So there is no best age specifically. There is an age where your age factor does not increase beyond that, but there's no best age. So another common question, and a bit of a shift since we've gone to the digital environment, is Well, the question is this: does SCERS handle my retiree health benefits or my deferred compensation plan? Short answer, no. Generally speaking, or historically at least, our seminars used to have speakers from the Employee Benefits Office and some comments from Fidelity and the 457 accounts. So because we've gone digital, we only present information about SCERS specifically, but we do have contacts for your other office that would help with information on this, because those are key pieces of what your retirement looks like. For your healthcare, actually for both, for your healthcare and for the benefits regarding your deferred compensation plans, you'll want to go through the Sacramento County Employee Benefits Office. That's the EBO for short. The phone number is 916-874-2020. This is the last question in the fax guide, so do take note of that. That's who you'll go to for information on that. And the last question here is, how does my pension affect Social Security benefits? And your SCERS benefit is separate and independent from your Social Security benefit. So it's there. No impact is the answer to that. There's no impact. They don't engage. As a retiree, so what that means is you don't have to turn Social Security on when you retire. Oftentimes we have retirees who retire before the eligible age for Social Security. So you stop working, you retire, you turn your SCERS benefit on. Maybe you're only 56 and you can't turn Social Security on at that point. So just know that later on down the road, when you are eligible to turn on your Social Security benefit, you do that separately. You'll do that through the Social Security Administration directly, and there's no impact there. Please reach out to them for information about what that looks like. We have their website linked down here for you too. So that's essentially the end of the presentation. So what I want to do now is I'm going to go ahead and close down shop for the microphone, but I want to keep that, we're going to keep the chat window up and running for you as you have questions. Continue those conversations, keep asking those questions. We're going to keep that open at least until 11. We may go a little bit past that, just depending on how active those questions are. So while the microphone is going to get turned off, we're still here to answer those questions. And to that note, we're always here to answer your questions. So moving forward, if you have the question about anything that comes up, reach out to the office. We have an active email box that is responded to daily, TAC Retire. And we also have the general office line, which has been provided as well. So give us a call or send us an email and we'll address that question for you. Otherwise, thank you for attending and have a good afternoon.